All right, guys, welcome back to another Master and Apprentice video and podcast. As you guys can see from the title, we're going to be reviewing the newest Star Wars Disney Plus show, The Acolyte. If you're any kind of Star Wars fan or Disney Plus watcher, you know it's been one of their big shows that have been premiering on Disney Plus. Context, this show takes place about 80-some years before the events of Phantom Menace, kind of still during the High Republic era for Jedi. The characters... Osha, May, they're kind of the main characters of the show. They're not really antagonists or protagonists. They kind of play both for the most part. And without getting into too many spoilers, I would just kind of drop things as we go, but I'm not going to break down the whole show as we go. So with all of that being said, some things that I liked before we get into the bad things, because there's quite a few bad things, if I'm being honest. Things that I liked, I thought the choreography was really good for the show. The lightsaber dueling and fighting, most fight scenes in general in this show, I thought were really, really good and fun. And that's something I feel like Star Wars has usually always had something working in its favor. But some of the last couple of lightsaber and just dueling in general, I think Ahsoka, Mandalorian season 3, they kind of struggled with the choreography. It was a little bit slower. And maybe that was on purpose, and it probably was. But for me personally, I enjoyed the lightsaber fighting in this show probably more than the last couple. Some other things, I really like the portrayal of all the Jedi and Sith for the most part. I thought they did a really good job of living up to what Jedi and the High Republic were. And I thought the Sith, they didn't hold back. He was supposed to be a bad guy, and he was a bad guy. And I really enjoyed Khmer, the Sith of the show, even though there might be some canon holes with this and the whole representation of there hasn't been a Sith in 1,000 years.
Impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium.
Not just shows up. Without getting in too much into that, the portrayal of this Sith, Khmer, I thought was really fun. I actually really liked him as a character. He's probably one of my favorite characters from the show in general. But besides that, there wasn't much else that really had rocking for this show. It's a show that you can probably skip over if I'm being honest. Something they didn't like. I thought the dialogue throughout the whole show was just bad. And that there's really no other way of sugarcoating it. Oftentimes, at least once or twice, if not multiple times throughout just one episode, the dialogue on the screen would take you out of what's actually happening. It would make you think and it would make you try to think and wait, didn't they say something that contradicted that? Or it was just too cringy or it was too corny? Just many times what was being said on the screen just kind of took you out of the scene. And when a show does that multiple times, it's bad, right? There's no other way of putting it. If it does it once or twice, you can forgive it, right? You know, something like Attack of the Clones. It has some cringy one-liners by Anakin and Hayden Christensen's portrayal.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Of him. But his character overall isn't bad. It's just sometimes when he goes on the romantic side, it's a little cringy, right?
The closer I get to you, the worse it gets. The thought of not being with you.
So you could forgive it if it did it once or twice, or if it was just in certain settings, but it does it throughout the whole show. It's kind of a repeating effect. In fact, most people who review this, I think, agree that the dialogue in the script of the show was just kind of bad. Second of all, I think the main actress, Amanda Stenberg, portrayal of Osha and May isn't necessarily bad. I don't think she did a really great job of portraying them as twins. She didn't do a good job of differentiating them, right? I get maybe that's kind of a hard thing to do, especially for a younger actress. I certainly couldn't do it. I'm not ripping the actress apart or anything like that. But oftentimes it was kind of hard to tell a difference. Even their motives seemed similar. And obviously they're the twins, so they would have similar motives. But I mean like identical. Like it seemed like they were the same person. And I get that's kind of what the cliffhanger was at the end. They're the same person but split apart. But I think it was kind of hard to differentiate just the character in general. And for, you know, twins, you're trying to portray one as good or bad. I mean, that was kind of the main point throughout the movie. But from beginning to end, it didn't really seem like they were that different. And I think that definitely didn't help the plot of the show. The show, its plot, it's like a mystery, like a murder mystery pretty much. And it's not bad, but with the dialogue not working in its favor and the protagonist not really being portrayed that well, it's kind of hard to tell like who's who that doesn't help it either. The motives aren't clear either. There's a lot of things that kind of take the plot of the show and just rip it up and make it hard to differentiate what's actually happened, what's important, what's plot development, and what's not. Obviously, I think the biggest thing that a lot of fans are going to rip on it for is the lore inaccuracies and the plot holes it creates in the canon universe. I'm not going to go over all of them, but just a short list. You have the Age of Ki-Adi-Mundi. It was changed in real time. If you went to Wikipedia before the premiere of that episode where Ki-Adi-Mundi was in, his date said an earlier time. If you went to the Wikipedia of Ki-Adi-Mundi after the show, his birth was a later time. Like, they actually changed how old he was in real time, which is Disney. It's their product. They're technically allowed to do that, but that, it makes it seem disingenuous almost, right? A character that's been established for a while now, you change them, and that just seems, again, disingenuous. The whole Sith line, they kind of worked around it. They killed a lot of the characters, but still, they did have the line in Phantom Menace, there hasn't been a Sith in a millennia.
Impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium.
And then they bring a Sith, and not only do they bring a Sith in, they make him present. Like, he's kind of heard and talked and seen by multiple sources and people throughout the show. So now that line seems very inaccurate when we hear it in the Phantom Menace, right? That's another thing. Lots of little inaccuracies in the show that they just changed on themselves, right? You'll hear one of the antagonists, May, will say to a Jedi, "Oh, you only remove your lightsaber if you're willing to kill," which that's by all standards what the Jedi stand against, right? Like, that doesn't make sense. And in fact, they contradict that multiple times throughout the show even. So there's just lots of little things that, if you're a Star Wars fan, like a real dive deep into the lore canon kind of fan, you watch all the shows like we do and you try to break down in lore, it's a little frustrating. It seems, again, disingenuous to the past, to the lore and canon that's already established, to the story of George Lucas. It just seems disingenuous.
I think the things that I liked the most about it were the concepts. The concepts that they added were some things that I liked, like Cortosis being brought into live actions. That was a cool thing to have on the TV screen. I liked seeing that. I liked the witches using their magic, which we've seen in the Clone Wars too, but these were cool concepts. I just didn't like how they were executed often. I mean, minor spoiler, but I don't like how all the witches died from that spell that they use. That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. I like the witches being made. I like the witches using this spell to mind control Kalnaka. That seems like a lazy way of killing them off. And I can forgive a couple of these things, but there just seems to be so many of them. I did like a lot of the visual effects. I liked the kyber crystal switching colors as it references the Ahsoka book, where Ahsoka takes the Inquisitor's lightsaber and changes it from red to white, as she's not a dark side user, and that's going into the kyber crystal more bonding with her. So that's something that they've had in books, and I like seeing that on screen, and it was cool to see that. I don't really mind them changing the birthday of a character. I can get over that. But just seeing season 1 of this, it feels like they did it for no reason. I understand there's no way that they're not going to put him in season 2 of this show and have some reason. But season 1, it seems like Ki-Adi-Mundi didn't even need to be in there. It feels like they just changed his birth date for zero reason whatsoever. One thing I am excited for, the next season coming, is the show is called The Acolyte. Acolyte is a assistant or follower, and I'm excited to see what they're going to do with Quimir, with Osha, and all that. I'm honestly excited to see that, where in the first season I wasn't. It does leave me on a cliffhanger that gets me excited for the second season, so I do like that about the show, but there were so many just little things that just felt weird or took me out of the show. I just didn't enjoy a lot of them, and Ki-Adi-Mundi was a big part of it.
Yeah, I mean, even the kyber crystal, like, that was a cool scene. Like, it was kind of cool to get that in live action for the first time, but like it all, if you didn't really know what you were looking for, that would have just kind of glossed over you, like, as a fan, right? Like, I feel like they could have made that more obvious, right? And the reason we say these things is because they had the biggest budget out of all the Star Wars shows so far, $180 million. Keep in mind, some other projects that have those kind of budgets or less than, or like movies like Godzilla, right? Godzilla -1, which has been a really big hit for nerds and fans, but because it has these crazy special effects and it's just this grandiose movie and they do all these crazy things on it. And that had a less budget than this. So they definitely have room to do these kind of things and they're just not. It's frustrating, right? And then I kind of say this at the end for a little bit of a spoiler because the finale is still relatively new. So if you don't want any spoilers, go ahead and click out of the video. But at the end, the beginning of the finale, they drop Plagueis. And at the end of the finale, they drop Yoda. Two characters that fans were kind of expecting from the get-go. Yoda was alive and well off at this time. And fans were kind of expecting Plagueis because this would be around the time his plan would start kind of enacting itself. And he'd be creating his plan. He'd probably start looking for Palpatine, not around this time, but his idea would be forming at this time, right? And I've seen lots of different theories of how you could have used him better, but they pretty much just cameo dropped him and then left. They didn't use his characters at all. And I feel like that was a detriment to the show, right? I don't feel like they needed to have those characters be the main characters throughout the show, but I feel like they definitely could have had more of a place throughout the show. It would have kind of given fans a little bit more of a reason to be interested and drawn to the show because there wasn't much of a reason, to be honest. So I think those are things they could have established earlier on. And to be honest, if we do release a season 2 of Acolyte, those two characters are pretty much the only reasons, right? No one really cares about Osha and May. I know Athens said they have more reason to care now, but still there's not a lot of reason to care. There aren't that interesting characters. And I just think having Plagueis and Yoda implemented earlier would have been more beneficial for the show. So with all those things being said, I'm going to give my official review of a 4 out of 10 for the Acolyte.
I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 10. It's just below a show that I wouldn't like because there's too many things that I dislike than like. So that's why I give it just under a 5.
A 5 out of 10 would be something like if someone asked if they should watch it, right? Or if I recommended it, a 5 out of 10 would be like, yeah, you could or you couldn't. You're not gonna hate it, but you're not gonna love it. It's just gonna be a show, right? And that's kind of how I feel about this. But the reason I bring it a notch lower is because if you're a Star Wars fan who's been invested in the story of George Lucas from 1977 to now 2024, it sometimes feels like they're spitting on the story. Right? When they change things that have been established, I know they're small, minute, but as a lifelong fan, those things kind of hurt as a fan, right? And I think it's very disingenuous to any Star Wars fan when they change the age, when they change characters, when they change the story, when they change lines. It makes it feel disingenuous. And I think because of that, I got to bring it down to a 4 out of 10. If you're a fan, it doesn't hurt to watch it, but just be wary. You're probably not going to like it unless you're very open-minded. If you're a younger fan who's more open-minded to new things in Star Wars, you're probably going to enjoy this. Or you're not going to hate it at least, right? If you're an older fan who has a lot more ties to the older stuff, right, from prequels and original trilogy, less of the new Disney era, you're probably not going to like it. That's not 100% certain, but that's just kind of what I've seen in the crowds who have liked it, disliked it, and who are indifferent. So let us know what you guys think of the show down in the comments. I'm interested to see what our following thinks of it. We have a pretty good split of young fans and older fans who listen and watch our stuff. So I don't know what you guys think of it. Let us know what you guys think of our review and breakdown down in the comments. And yeah, with that, we will see you guys in the next video. See ya.
Peace.